What is moisturizer? I haven't used that in 13 years. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about the skin prep that I do on clients. So if you don't know, I do freelance makeup as well as this, and I also work at a Sephora store. So I do this skin prep basically on pretty much anyone, whether it be freelancing or at work. I just find it works really, really well. The products work well together. They work on pretty much any skin type. They're all good for more sensitive skins. So I'm just gonna be kind of taking you through the process that I do when I'm working on a client. Skincare is really, really, really important when you're working on clients because obviously on yourself, you know what your skincare routine is, you know what you've been doing day to day, what your skin texture is like, so you're more familiar with what products to use. You can maybe experiment a little bit more. But with clients, they're gonna come into you with a variety of different skin concerns. They're gonna come into you with a variety of different levels of experience with skincare, if that makes sense. So some of them are gonna be like, oh yeah, I have, a really good routine and I do it nightly and it's totally great. And then some of them are gonna be like, what is moisturizer? I haven't used that in 13 years. So you kind of have to be prepared to, obviously you're not going to be able to undo if they haven't been taking care of their skin for years and years and years, but you can do your best to remedy those things in the time that you have. You also want to make sure you're always asking your clients if they have any allergies or skin sensitivities before you put anything on their face, just to make sure that you're not going to irritate them, obviously. All of these products that I'm going to show you are fairly safe for sensitive skin. They should work on most everybody. But some people do have specific allergies. You just want to make sure you're asking before you touch your client's face with any of these products, basically. The other thing to mention is sometimes clients will come in with their skincare already done. Most of the time, I actually will take this off and do my own skincare just because I know how these products work together. But it just kind of depends on the situation, so just use your better judgment when it comes to that. And then the other thing is with hygiene, you want to obviously make sure your hands are clean. Some people like to apply skincare with brushes. This doesn't work so well for me. I find it much easier to control the amount of product, and then I can kind of feel the skin texture and everything else with my hands. But I always make sure they're clean, so I always wash my hands before, obviously, and then before I put on the skincare in front of the client, I will sanitize with hand sanitizer and let it sink in a little bit, obviously, so you're not going in with hand sanitizer on their face. But that way it gives your hands an extra sanitation, and also the client knows that your hands are clean and they're gonna feel more comfortable with you touching their face. If the client really doesn't want you to touch their face with your hands, then obviously don't. But this is just what works for me, and I haven't really had any issues with it. All right, let's move on to the actual products. So the first thing I do is kind of cleanse the skin with either a micellar water or a makeup wipe. Some good micellar waters are Caudalie has a good one, Dr. Jart, even the Sephora collection one is pretty good as well. You just wanna, again, make sure you're choosing stuff that is suitable for sensitive skin. Same thing with makeup wipes. You want to be really careful about what makeup wipes you use on clients. I really like the original simple ones. You can get these at pretty much any drugstore. They're pretty inexpensive and they work really, really well. They're very, again, safe for sensitive skin. They don't have any strong fragrance or anything like that. They're not too harsh. They don't feel super drying on the skin. For me, I have super sensitive skin, so I always kind of test things out on myself before I put them on clients. But this has worked really, really well. So I'll just kind of gently go over everything. Obviously, if the client already has makeup on, I'll kind of have them remove it themselves actually with a makeup wipe, and then I'll just go in once more and kind of get any residue that's left on the skin. I will then do a very gentle exfoliation. This step is super, super important for me. I find when I skip this step, my base just does not look as good as I want it to. So I find this step is super, super important in order to get that really nice, smooth, glowy, even base. And that is the First Aid Beauty Radiance pads. So these are a very gentle chemical exfoliant. They're just gonna take off any surface texture on the skin, just any dryness, flakiness, stuff like that. But I've never had any issues with a client reacting to these. They're super gentle. They work really well. It's so quick and easy. You just kind of run a pad all over and it takes off any areas. Whenever I can visibly see texture on a client's skin, like a flakiness or anything like that, I'll kind of concentrate more in that area and really get all that texture off the skin before I go in with the rest of my products. But yeah, this is a super important step, makes a huge difference. These aren't too crazy expensive. Obviously they're sold at Sephora, they're a little bit higher end, but they're not horrible, and it works really, really, really well. Next is moisturizer. Now there's a lot of great moisturizers out there that'll work. This is the one I found that works best in my specific routine, and that is the Sephora Collection Hyaluronic Acid Hydrate and Glow Moisturizer. This is not cruelty free, so keep that in mind if you're wanting to do an all cruelty free kit. But this I just find works really, really well. It's a very lightweight, glowy, hyaluronic acid based moisturizer. It's very gentle, it's very kind of basic, it's pretty inexpensive, so it works really, really well for pretty much any client, whether they're dry, oily, whatever. If they are oily, it's going to not be super heavy on the skin, it's still lightweight, but if they're dry, it's still going to give them some good hydration. So I find this works really, really well after going in with the Radiance pads. So then depending on the client, I will also go in with an oil. Usually if the client is combination to dry, or if I can again see visible dry texture on their skin, I will go in with an oil. If they're super, super oily, I will sometimes skip this step. But I just find it makes such a difference in, again, the texture of the skin and everything like that. So with oils, I'm honestly not too picky. As long as it's gentle and hydrating, I'm good with it. This is just the one I have right now. This is the First Aid Beauty Ultra Repair Oat and Cannabis Sativa Oil, safe for sensitive skin. This works really well. The only thing I don't like about this is the smell. It has kind of a, I don't know, like, it's like a weird sort of like patchouli almost, like something, I don't know, something sort of like naturopathic is what it smells like. But anyways, it's a nice little oil. My favorite is actually the People Goji Berry oil. I really, really like that one. I find it sinks quickly into the skin, gives really good hydration, it's gentle. That one does not have a scent, which is really, really nice. But there's obviously a bunch of options for different types of oils. Just again, making sure you're getting something that's going to be safe for sensitive skin. The Ordinary has a lot of inexpensive oils. They have, I think, a jojoba oil, rose, so that might be a good place to start. I haven't personally tried those, but it seems like a pretty good bet in terms of an oil for clients. So all I do with this is I'll put a couple little drops into my palms, rub it together, and just press it onto the skin. I usually focus on the cheek area, sometimes on the nose if it's really dry, but especially for combination skin, if they get an oily T-zone, I'll just kind of do the cheek area and leave it at that. So I generally don't keep an eye cream in my kit. It's just like one other step. If you want to keep one, and one I use at work a lot is the Biossance Peptide Eye Gel. That one works really, really well. You just want to get something that's very hydrating, lightweight, and that's all you really need for an eye cream. But honestly, I just take the moisturizer up under there and I'm good to go. You can also get eye gel patches, which I actually really like using. I've used the Peter Thomas Roth ones quite a bit, and you just kind of set those under the eye. And it's really nice if you do eyes first, because you can kind of set those down and leave them there where you're working on eyeshadow, and it sort of catches all the fallout, so you don't really have to clean it up later. You just peel the patches off and good to go. And also it's nice for the client. They feel like they're being pampered a little bit, and it just kind of helps hydrate that under eye area too. So that's something, it's an option to keep in your kit. I don't keep them in my freelance kit just because they're kind of expensive, and it's like, it's not a necessary thing, but that is something to keep in mind if you have that within your budget to add that to your kit. It's a nice little additive when it comes to skincare. I feel like it looks really dark. The sun's going down, so I'm sorry if the lighting is kind of weird in here. Okay, so at this step, after I've done the Radiance pads, moisturizer, oil, any eye stuff that I'm doing, I will generally just let that sit and sink into the skin, and then I'll do the eyes and the brows. That's just how I typically do makeup. If you do skin prep first, you could just go straight in with the foundation, but I find it works better to kind of, especially with oilier skin, kind of let that sink into the skin while you're doing other things. So the one thing I want to talk about is SPF. Now, SPF is tricky when working on clients. You're not always going to need it, honestly, although I always advocate for wearing an SPF every day. You're going to sort of tailor it to your client and to the event. So let's say if it's like an evening event or like an indoor photo shoot all day, you really don't need an SPF, and it's just easier, honestly, if you don't have to worry about it. But if it's going to be something that's going to be outside, so like a wedding or like a outdoor photo shoot, something like that, it is nice to put an SPF on your client. Now again, you're going to work with your client on this. Obviously if they have an allergy, don't put any SPF on them. If they tell me that they never wear SPF, honestly, I don't put one on them. Now I do tell them like, hey, you should really wear an SPF. Good for your skin, it's gonna protect your skin, but it's really not gonna make too much of a difference for this one day. That's just gonna be, again, working with your client on what they're comfortable with when it comes to SPF. Again, it is really important for your skin to be doing that day to day, but if a client never wears it, then client never wears it. So if you've determined that it is appropriate to do an SPF for this situation, if your client requests it, whatever, there are a couple different ones to think about. So typically a chemical SPF is going to sit better under makeup. It's going to work on more skin tones. And it's just going to kind of look better in terms of makeup application. However, some people do have sensitivities to chemical SPFs. They're also not the best for the environment. So that's something to keep in mind as well, because they can cause damage to reefs. Pretty much anywhere it's going to be damaging because of water runoff, but especially if you're doing anything near the ocean, or if your client is like, let's say, modeling for a photo shoot, that's just something to be conscientious of. So I prefer to use a physical SPF when I can, but again, if you're working with a client with a deeper skin tone, a lot of physical SPFs are gonna give a very white cast, which is, again, not good for photos. So just keep that in mind. So I would recommend actually keeping both a physical and a chemical SPF in your kit, so that you can use the physical SPF where possible, but you do have that chemical SPF in case you need it. So the one I actually end up using the most is the Volition Prismatic Luminizing Shield. I have this tiny little one right here. This is a chemical physical blend. It does not have oxybenzone, which is the worst ingredient for oceans. However, it does still have octinoxate, I think that's how you say it, but I'm not entirely sure, which is still not great, but it's a little bit better. But it also has titanium and zinc oxide. This one I find doesn't give a crazy white cast, so it works well for like medium skin tones. But again, if you're working with deeper skin tones, you may want to go for the chemical route because this does still have a little bit of a white cast. But I find this one works really, really well with these other products. It doesn't pill, it's lightweight, feels good on the skin, so it just works really well in my routine. Another one I would recommend doing is, this is a pure physical SPF, and that is the Josie Maran Broad Spectrum SPF. This is fantastic. It's super lightweight, very glowy. It doesn't feel super sunscreeny like a lot of physical SPFs do. They have a tinted version too, which I think is a great thing to have in your kit because it helps mellow out that white cast. Drunk Elephant has a tinted version too, however I wouldn't really recommend that one for client work because it does have a tendency to pill, and I don't find it works as well with the other products as this one does, but this one works great. One of my personal favorites, so it's a really good physical SPF. Now the one that I have in my kit for freelance is the Lancome UV Expert. I haven't used this very much, so I'm not necessarily recommending this one specifically, but I think having a chemical SPF in your kit is beneficial so that you can work on a broader range of skin tones. The one I use generally at work is the Supergroup one. That one works great. Those are my recommendations for SPFs to have in your kit. Okay, I turned some studio lights on because it's looking a little dark. It gets dark so early now. It makes it harder to film because I prefer to just use natural light, but it's getting a little dark. The last thing I want to talk about is primers. So for primer, honestly, a lot of times I don't use primer. I think the skin prep you do before that is much, much more important, but there are a couple that I do keep in my kit and that I like. The first is the Smashbox Photo Finish Primerizer. This is really just a hydrating primer. Honestly, you don't necessarily need this. The moisturizer works just fine, but what I like this for is if my client's really dry, let's say, and after that skincare is sunk in, their skin has just like absorbed it all and they need that little extra boost of hydration before I go in with the foundation. This works really well for that. Super lightweight, again, plays nice with other products. And it's just super nice on the skin, makes it really hydrated and plump. I also like having this in my kit for cleaning stuff up. I find it works really well for like cleaning up a winged liner, for example, because if you're using like a makeup remover for that, especially if you have to do it a couple times, it can irritate the client's skin. This doesn't do that, but it still does a really good job at just cleaning up that winged liner. You can also use a moisturizer, but I find this one works just a little bit better. So I really like having this in my kit. So the second thing is like an actual primer, and that is the Smashbox Photo Finish Original Primer. This is like a smoothing, pore filling primer, and I find this works really, really well on pretty much any skin type. It's a smoothing primer, so it really helps with pores, and I will sometimes, if I use this, I just do it kind of right here in the T-zone to kind of smooth over those pores. And again, I just sort of tailor this to my client, whether I think they need that or not. Yeah, I really like this one. It still works on dry skin. I don't find it to be too drying at all, but it still helps smooth over those pores. And yeah, that is it for the skin prep that I do on clients. Okay, y'all, that is everything for today. I hope this video was helpful and informative, and maybe you learned a little something. Keep in mind, these aren't necessarily things that I'd recommend for your like personal everyday routine, or although I don't think you'd be dissatisfied with any of them. I just find this works really, really well for working on clients. All these products work well together, and it's been a good time for me and these products. So anyways, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and follow me on my other social medias if you'd like to see more of me, and I will see you all again soon. Okay, bye. That was rude. With your clients, they're gonna, and then I'll just conscientious, oxide, oh god.